After acquiring NBA superstar Damian Lillard, the Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis have immense pressure to be one of the best teams in the league, make the finals again, and possibly win an NBA championship. And for the most part, they've met expectations pretty well. But looking at Giannis the individual, in 2023 so far, his offensive game has taken yet another leap. As so far, he's averaging 32.0 points per game, that is top 3 in the NBA, 10.8 boards, 5.0 assists, 1.6 steals on career high shooting from the field. And if you look through NBA history, to this point Giannis will be one of 3 players ever to have 32 points, 10 boards, and 5 assists in a single season. The other 2 players being Wilt Chamberlain, as well as Elgin Baylor. And surprising to me, when Wilt accomplished that back in the day, his field goal percentage was barely above 50%. Of course, compared to Giannis, who's upwards of 60%. Giannis at this point is kind of a spliced together Wilt Chamberlain, Shaq, and Kevin Garnett. As offensively, he can give you 45-50 points like Wilt, like Shaq, 10 to 15 boards, and like KG, easily 5 dimes per game. And look, despite being so dominant, so great offensively, there's still a sect of NBA fans who despise Giannis in his game. And they'll always say Giannis, he's a free throw merchant, isn't skilled, and has no offensive game outside of 10 feet. And look, regardless of where you stand on that, if you believe some of those things, Giannis the individual player, despite not being the most skilled guy, still dominates in an historic fashion. I mean, look at his last 17 games. For a modern day 7-footer, he does everything on the basketball court except shoot threes well. As in those games, he's averaging 35.9 points, nearly 12 boards, 5.7 assists, 2 steals on 65.9% shooting. The Bucks in those matchups are 13-4, and Giannis himself has 4 games of 40-plus points. And his latest display of dominance versus Indiana, it had the anti-Giannis crowd completely outraged. As looking at his shot chart, 100% of his buckets came in the paint and in the restricted area. And look, some might hate on that, saying he isn't skilled, but the way I look at it, scoring 64 points all at the basket, it's one of the more unique things for the modern era, as really no superstar outside of Giannis can score that many points without a made three-pointer. I mean, in the last 23 years, it's only happened once with Shaq in 2000. And all-time historically, only 10 players have scored 64 points or higher, Giannis being one of those. Whichever way you slice it, Giannis versus the Pacers was an historic game and an historic moment for him and the Bucks franchise. And I think playing Indiana, that matchup, has a lot of extra juice going into it and is indeed personal. As Indiana in this matchup were definitely very chippy and a little pissed off from Vegas despite beating them and mocking Dame late in that matchup. And you can call it stat padding disrespectful, but Giannis in the fourth quarter only seeing out 1 minute, scoring 26 points, despite it being a blowout, was a clear message to the Pacers and NBA fans league-wide. And as a big Giannis fan, I absolutely loved it. And once again, looking at that shot chart, all of Giannis' buckets being made in the paint, yes, it tells a story of Giannis Antetokounmpo, but on the other hand, paints a pretty bad picture of Indiana and their defense. As right now the Pacers are dead last in paint points allowed, second to last in second chance points, 29th in rebounds, and 28th in defensive ratings. Look, if you're someone like Giannis, not a great outside shooter, when you're playing the Indiana Pacers, all your shots should be in the paint and around the basket. And one stat that might blow your mind, Giannis versus the Pacers in 3 games, averaging above 50 points. Of course, scoring 64, having 54, and even 37. Now, even crazier than those numbers, Giannis in those 3 games has a combined 0 made threes. That not only is credit to Giannis, but a major indictment on the Pacers and their awful defense. And if you want to go one step further, look at Giannis' scoring in the paint. Right now in the NBA, he ranks first in paint points per game at exactly 19.0. Zion Williamson ranks second at only 14. And look at that shooting percentage, nearly 80%. Out of the entire top 25, no other player even comes close. And if you want to talk historically, paint scoring stats have been kept since 1997. If Giannis keeps this pace up, he'd have more points in the paint for a single year than Shaq, Kevin Garnett, Chris Webber, and any all-time great center who played during that time period. And with Giannis being so dominant in the paint, and his co-star Dame Lillard dominating the perimeter, that makes this Bucks duo one of the more unique duos in the NBA. As really only Jokic and Murray have that paint presence and perimeter presence like Dame and Giannis. And compared to the Eastern Conference, yes, there are some teams that have better depth and a better bench than Milwaukee. But if you want to talk 1-2 punch, I just think come playoff time, that superstar power impact on both ends of the court, that will overcome a team like Boston who's deeper and more well-rounded. And look, Tatum and Brown are fantastic. But in a playoff series, Game 6, Game 7 in the fourth quarter, who do you trust more? Tatum or Giannis? Dame or Jalen? Basketball is one of those unique sports where yes, it's still a team sport, but a superstar player can change the outcome of a game with a couple of shots, a big time run, or an explosive fourth quarter. Look, it is pretty simple. The Bucks and Celtics are really neck and neck. But at this very moment, when it comes to Dame and Giannis versus Tatum and Brown, I trust the Bucks to get it done more than those guys. Could I be wrong? Definitely I could. But historically speaking, superstar players in the playoffs win you games and win you series. Now, speaking of winning games, that is a big part of being the NBA's MVP. And it seems like every single year, it's three guys at the top of that race, that being Giannis, Jokic, and Joel. And look, it might get boring. The same guys over and over and over and over again vying for that MVP. But to these guys' credit, they're some of the few superstars who take every game seriously and actually care about playing hard the entire season. Now, to wrap this video up, looking back at that 64-point explosion, after the game there was tons of controversy, a mini fight, and Giannis getting pissed. And I think there's multiple angles to this. As a Pacers team, their player, Oscar Tshiebwe, scoring his first NBA point. Yes, I kinda get it. You want that game ball because it was a big deal. But on the flip side, Giannis Antetokounmpo, one of the A-list superstars, had career high in points, broke the Bucks record, and quite possibly had the best game of his career. Look, the NBA is a superstar league, so on this instance, I gotta side with Giannis getting that game ball and not Oscar. Did the Greek freak cross the line get a little bit too heated? Maybe he did. But the Indiana Pacers taking that game ball supposedly was a pretty petty move. And one thing I'm desperately hoping for in the first round, possibly second round, is a Pacers vs Bucks series. As these two teams play drastically different styles, it's up and down, high scoring, high paced, and best of all, they don't like each other. I'm definitely pleasantly surprised that Bucks vs Pacers, the Battle of the Midwest, is one of the better rivalries in the NBA today. So that right there is the end of the video, and once again, Team Giannis all the way. Playstyle be damned, 3-point shooting be damned. This guy at worst is a top 3 player, and I would argue the second best player behind Jokic in the entire world. As always, thank you guys for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time.